a lot of what we've been doing has been ignoring coal and its potential as a major resource in this country. It's always been that way. And I would point out that I think in your testimony you said that we've relied on three major sources. Of course, we've got our renewables, but we also, our three major sources are nuclear, coal, and natural gas. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think you also reported that just the Mercury utility MAC rules would cost about $21 billion a year and 183,000 jobs a year. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that retirement of coal power plants, by 2016, we're going to be retiring 27 gigawatts. Is that also accurate?
I think that's through 2015, and that's an EIA number that's been reported to them by electric utility companies.
All right, and that's much higher than the EPA's estimates when they first came out with this new regulation. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, not only is it going to affect jobs in the coal fields and at coal-fired power plants, but it also will cause our electric rates to go up by 10 to 20% in most of the country. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in some parts in the Midwest, I don't represent them, but in some parts it could be right up there at the 20%.
Mm-hmm. And yes, in states that are highly dependent on coal-fired generation.
You know, when I was asked earlier about the issue of coal, you know, under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, you know, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, you know, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
Forward. So that's sacrifice number one. Nothing's for free. Now the second example I want to use is the energy example that we've already talked about a little bit. If we're going to get serious and cap the emission of greenhouse gases that are causing global warming, then we are going to be having power plants have to figure out how they're going to reduce their carbon, because they'll have to pay penalties if they exceed the cap. And that means that they're going to have to change how their power plants operate. And that means, in turn, that they'll have to make investments that they will try to pass on to consumers and could result in higher electricity prices.
You do raise some concern and worry that the EPA may decide that the modifications in regard to greenhouse gases could impact existing coal-fired power plants, because that would force them to, if they interpreted that complying with utility MAC created them to, into a new source, that would then put a tremendous amount of pressure on the existing coal-fired power plants and cause even more closures. Is that correct?
Yes, because under the utility MAC rule, if there are substantial changes, they might be able to look at that particular unit as a new unit and therefore treat it as a new unit, where they don't want the amount of greenhouse gas emissions to be any more than from a natural gas plant, essentially.
And you cited a report from the United Mine Workers of America that would indicate that if that were to happen, that job losses could amount to more than 50,000 direct jobs if you count coal, utilities, and the railroad industry, and as much as 250,000 jobs indirect. Is that a correct assessment of what the UMWA said?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is of great concern in my area because we have railroads, coal, and utility companies. I would point out also that it's kind of interesting that your written testimony indicates that the Chinese are using about 4 times as much coal as we are, and that while they're building cleaner plants, they're not putting their older, less clean plants out of existence in the meantime, are they?
No, they're not. With their GDP growth, they need all the power they can get. And in fact, according to the National Energy Technology Laboratory, they're building 60 to 80 gigawatts of coal-fired plants a year, and they think that'll happen easily through 2016 and maybe further.
And so they're relying on coal, including maybe even some of our coal, to generate their energy and the growth in their economy. Isn't that true?
Yes, they have to import coal now. They can't produce enough themselves to satisfy their demand, and we are exporting coal to them.
And so when I tell my constituents that not only are we damaging coal, but we're also damaging jobs in the United States, we're allowing the Chinese to grow their economy while retarding our economy by not using our clean coal technology. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And in fact, in my district, there's a plant that just opened this year that's extremely clean, and because of the carbon rules, the greenhouse gas rules, it wouldn't be allowed to be built if it hadn't already been under construction and then opened this year. Isn't that correct? And so for all intents and purposes, at least at this point in history, there's not the technology available for the United States to build any more clean coal plants, coal-fired electric generation plants, and we're really handicapping ourselves in relationship to our competitiveness with the Chinese. Isn't that also true?
Yes, we don't, currently CCS technology is not available, commercially available for these plants.
All right, I thank you and yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Continuing coverage tonight on a story we first told you about yesterday after company officials announced several local miners would be losing their jobs. 7 News anchor Nate Fluharty joins us live here in our 7 studios with more on those layoffs. Nate?
Yeah, Jamie, it was unexpected and bad news after Ohio American Energy announced their plans of laying off 32 workers at the Redbird West coal mine in Brilliant. Now, right now, that mine employs 56 people, but years ago, when it was operating at its peak, they employed over 30. Now, we had the chance to talk to the mine owner, Bob Murray. Murray, who has been an outspoken opponent of President Obama, solely blamed his administration and the EPA as the reason for these layoffs.
I grew up in this area. My employees are my friends. They're my relatives. And I care deeply for them. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're a Republican or a Democrat in the Ohio Valley. You're for jobs. Doesn't make any difference whether you're a Republican or Democrat. You're for jobs. But not Obama. I'm twice over the largest employer in this area. And I know I can't keep these jobs here.
Now, Murray added that he expects more layoffs to continue within his company in the future, and he added that he'll do everything he can to fight the president on the evolution of clean coal technology.
The problem is, can you get the American people to say this is really important and force their representatives to do the right thing? That requires mobilizing a citizenry. That requires them understanding what is at stake. And climate change is a great example. When I was asked earlier about the issue of coal, under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.